be a self-promoter. And I don't mean it in an arrogant, obnoxious way. I mean, I've worked for a boss, Randy Falco, who used to say it wasn't just enough to create value for a company or for yourself. You have to signal value. You have to show people, whether it's your shareholders, whether it's your customers, you have to show them the value you're creating. It's the same thing with your personal brand. You've got to use the platforms available to you to show what you're doing. Real change, real impact, real success. I'm not talking about just promoting for promoting's sake. I'm talking about how did you move the needle? What did you do to drive a business decision, to drive success, to show EBITDA income, EBITDA growth, to show other metrics that people would value, whether it's marketing, operations, or sales.
Welcome to Icons and Insights powered by C360, where the business of sports, technology, and broadcasting converge to create the immersive media economy. Now let's get into it with your hosts, Howard Wright and Cher Jones.
Howard, sports, content, media, technology continue to evolve and transform at lightning speed. As a result, there are some incredible career and growth opportunities that are being created right now in the immersive media economy. And one of the best ways to get a handle on what's hot and what's next is to find out what type of talent and the experience that they're searching for right now to lead the way. So tell me about today's icon, because I know we're going to get exactly what we need to know from our icon today.
So our icon today is Rick Alessandri. Friend and business partner for almost 30 years now. He's managing director of Turnkey Search, a division of Turnkey Sports Entertainment. And he's also managing director of media at 76 Capital Sports Advisory. Rick has had his finger on the pulse of sports, tech, media for 35 years now, including senior positions at Univision, Disney, ESPN, Dow Jones, and SportsTicker. So it's with great pleasure that we introduce my friend and colleague, Rick Alessandri.
I love it, Rick. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to have an awesome conversation.
It's scary when the term icon is used, but I'll go with it for now. Thanks.
Own it. Own it. It's all yours. And when we look at your experience, because you, like we said, 35 plus years in the industry, and now you are searching for the industry's top, the best, the finest, the perfect placements. And you did that with somebody I already know. So you did that with Howard. You did that also with other talent within C360. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I want to talk about you and your experience. What's your origin story to get to where you are now? Because you didn't start your career in search. Talk to me a little bit about where you started.
No, I'm still a rookie in search. It's been 3 years, but my career really was based in sports journalism. I then transitioned into sports business, and then that evolved from there. But I started when I was a sophomore at Fordham University, 1982, working for a company called SportsTicker, which was the original sports news wire service. It was the way scores, baseball scores, football scores were delivered to radio and television stations around the country. And I started working there at nights to gather sports news and scores. It eventually transitioned into a computer operation. And since I was one of the more younger staff members, I was not intimidated by the computers. And I eventually found a full-time role 6 months after starting. Ran the newsroom operation for several years, covered the Yankees, Mets, Jets, Giants, Islanders, Rangers, all the local New York teams, and then made the switch into business, the business side of it. Ran the sales and marketing department, ran the operations, and was fortunate enough to have a boss who saw the passion and the commitment in me to give me more opportunity. And that commitment led to ultimately becoming essentially the chief operating officer of the company, working for the boss at the time, Peter Bavasi, long-standing history of baseball Bavasi's. Buzzy Bavasi was the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers and president of the San Diego Padres. So there's a long-standing history there. Peter was a great mentor, still is to this day, one of the people that I go to with any major life decisions, not just business, but life decisions. He's a real influence in my life. We eventually sold the company to Telerate, which then sold to Dow Jones. I became part of the Dow Jones company, which was amazing, long-standing, storied history in journalism. Eventually, we sold the business to ESPN in 1994, when ESPN was just starting to expand all their businesses beyond just the one linear network, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN, all kinds of extensions. ESPN Sportsnet on Prodigy was one of the extensions. And as they were getting deeper into the internet, the start of the internet, they figured they needed actually to own the source of sports news and information. And we were one of those sources. So we became part of that operation. I stayed there for 7 years as we grew the business internationally. So we expanded to do scores from all around the soccer leagues around the world, baseball leagues around the world. And then in 2000, I was fortunate enough to go work for George Bodenheimer, who was the president of ESPN. He asked me to join as chief of staff. I did that for 3 years. It was a remarkable 3 years working for him, learning all the various aspects and nooks and crannies of the business operations. And then ultimately, after 3 years of doing that, became senior VP, general manager of ESPN Enterprises, which was our business line extensions, everything from the ESPN zones to golf schools to the mobile products, where I met Mr. Wright here. Then I also led the X Games for 4 years as chief, CXO of the X Games. That led to, unfortunately, leaving ESPN in 2011. Mm-hmm. We can get into that a little bit later. And then made the move to Univision as the senior VP of Univision Enterprises, where I was charged with building all the business extensions for the U.S. Hispanic community, largest U.S. Hispanic media company. And I did that until 2018, left and became an executive recruiter with Turnkey, which we eventually were just acquired less than 9 months ago, by one of the top 10 global recruitment firms in the world, ZRG Partners. And I'm here today labeled as an icon, but it's been a long road, and it's been about learning a lot from a lot of new people, a lot of different people along the way, and meeting folks like Howard and many of his colleagues, and leveraging those relationships into other business opportunities.
What's interesting about that is that each spot along your career journey you can tap into, from actually doing the work to know what you're looking for when it comes to your work now. So it's a really interesting play, because you've touched every part of this industry and as a doer, as an executor. And now that allows you, and those relationships you built along the way also allow you to tap into and build your network. So I can see exactly in this zigzag line how you ended up in the perfect spot in your career right now. So that's awesome. And I see it happening. But
let me just add to that. Actually, I think that's a really different distinction between myself and some of my colleagues at Turnkey ZRG in terms of how we operate. We have been operators before. We do know what it takes to succeed in business. We've had experience hiring, fortunately firing, transitioning teams, growing teams, building teams. So there are many senior leaders in executive search firms who are tremendous recruiters and tremendous people who identify talent. I think one of the things that separates our division is that we actually have had hands-on experience building those businesses as well.
So, Rick, tell us about some of the roles that are open, not just the roles that you filled. Me sitting in the seat that I am in, you've helped us find our CFO, James Jones. You'll help us find other senior executives as part of our growth and maturation. But I just don't think folks understand what happens behind the scenes in terms of these prime C-level jobs become available, and the company of choice says, okay, I need to call Rick because I need to find a candidate that can do these very specific things and do them with a very short learning curve.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I believe really separates us, and one of the reasons why I joined Turnkey Search at the time, was because of Len Perner, our founder and chairman. Len has been building this business for 25 years. He ran sports team operations in Detroit and Dallas. He has a history and a legacy of building strong, trusted relationships, and that's what this is all about. It's about trusted relationships. He often says that we're not working on your search the minute we sign an agreement with you. We've been working on it for 25 years. We've been building that network. We've been building those relationships. We know where the talent is. The other thing I think that separates us is that we're not just focused on the C-suite, the suite roles like you and James have have achieved. But we're also working at the director level and even below that at times, because we believe following and identifying young talent is incredibly important to build that pipeline. The pipeline is really the next generation of leaders. So that's one of the reasons why we support initiatives like Sports Business Journal's 40 Under 40, or SBJ's Voices Under 30, or Synopsis's Top Women in Media. It's about identifying that talent. That eventually leads to prime searches. In the last 8 months, 10 months, we've done the commissioner of the ACC, Jimmy Phillips. We did the commissioner of the Pac-12, George Klavkoff. We've done the commissioner of Major League Rugby, George Killebrew. But we've done a tremendous amount of other searches, from chief communications officers to chief revenue roles. We just placed a senior leader within Endeavor, the largest agency in the world. That'll be announced shortly, which was a highly competitive, highly sought after role. But Mark Shapiro, Karen Brotkin, and Endeavor trusted us with that, and we brought them a tremendous slate of candidates. And they are really pleased with their selection, and we're excited for that individual to start next month. So, there's lots out there. I've been fortunate enough to work on, to your point, I focus a lot on our sports tech and media practice, but I'm involved in other searches as well across the sports landscape, but working on roles for the Utah Jazz or for the Portland Trailblazers or the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we're doing a director of marketing for them, the New York Jets, director of social media, ASM Global, chief commercial officer. It really runs the gamut. And that's part of what I love about this. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving and growing. And now with ZRG Partners, it's global in nature.
Right. And then looking at that constant evolution, especially evolution within talent and expectations to lead as this immersive media economy, as this area, continues to mature. What are some of the things that you're looking for within your candidates? I recognize there's role specific stuff, but there might be stuff across the board that might be important. Like for me, in my area of interest, of course, is always going to be social media and personal branding, and how, we're seeing employees and leaders being a part of that business conversation online. So what are you looking for? Like, what are those key pieces that, regardless of role, you're looking out for?
For us, it's first understanding what our client's culture is. You need to really understand the culture that is at an environment, at a company, before you can go and fill a particular role. Because you can find lots of individuals who have skill sets. You can look at resumes, you can talk to people, you can do reference checks. But at the end of the day, if the cultures don't align, if somebody's not inclined to sit in an entrepreneurial world like Howard and James just did with C360, and they don't understand by joining an organization like that, Howard's not the typical CEO. He comes from big companies, really big companies, and has made the transition to a small startup entrepreneurial environment. That's a mindset. That's somebody who either has it in their DNA or doesn't. And if you don't put the right person in that role, it's not going to work. So first, it's about understanding the culture. Then in terms of identifying people, it's about constantly developing that pipeline. It's about understanding what drives and motivates individuals. It's about, are they risk takers? We put them through assessments. We have something at Turnkey ZRG called the PXT, which is a personal assessment. We get into psychographics of an individual to understand, are they really a risk taker, or are they just saying that they're a risk taker? What have they done to actually exhibit those risk-taking moves? Are they innovative? Are they a people person? Are they a pleaser? Or are they somebody that's going to challenge the status quo? And have they had success? What are the metrics? You've got to look at somebody's career and say, okay, how did you move the needle in terms of a business opportunity? Are you somebody that truly builds relationships? Do you cultivate those relationships? Are they trusted relationships? Those are the things that, again, it takes time to understand somebody, and that's why we go deep with people, especially at the senior leadership side, because we're making big bets with companies. These are highly sought after roles. Many cases we don't have to recruit. There's tons of people who want these roles. We've got to find the best of the best, cream of the crop.
So the metrics and the matrices, Rick, some of us have been talking about diversity and inclusion long before George Floyd and this last summer of horror, kind of awakening, let's say. How do you use D&I as a variable in this calculus of this job that you're trying to do? Because if it's the number one thing, then your pool of potential candidates is small. How do you go about that? Or is that, if it's trade secret at the ZRG, you don't have to tell us, but how do you incorporate that in the overall arithmetic of filling these spots?
For us, it's been from day one. I mean, you know, when I joined the company 3 years ago in October, you know, this is, you know, I've only worked for really 3 companies in my life. This is the 3rd one. And the idea of going to work for someone that has this in their mission statement, that has this in their DNA, was important to me. It has always been important to me, as you know, from my career. And Len Perner and the team have always exhibited that at Turnkey. Our slates are always diverse. That said, it's never enough. So what we've done is we've continued to build out relationships with organizations like RISE, for instance, Steve Ross's RISE organization, Racial in Sports and Entertainment. Now, we were one of the founding partners there. We work with Pro Sports Assembly. We are one of the only firms now that I know of, at least one of the first firms I know of, that has a particular individual focused on D&I in our practice. Who pushes us constantly to make sure that we're going deeper and deeper and deeper and trying to find, you know, underserved and underrepresented communities. So that's been important for us. That said, there are a lot of particular roles and functions where there is not a deep talent pool, unfortunately, of diverse candidates. So our job is to help, you know, challenge the status quo, to put forth candidates who might not check all the boxes, but at least get them in the room. Get those individuals in the room to go through the experience, to put them in front of people. And maybe it's not the top role, the one we're recruiting for, but at least there's some awareness now of this individual for the next opportunity. Or maybe they create an opportunity for that individual because they see something unique and differentiated about that person. So for us, it's just constantly about pushing the envelope. And, you know, some clients are incredibly receptive to that, and we challenge them, and some are challenging us constantly. Go back. We need more. We need more diversity. We need a stronger slate here, and we're constantly working in hand with them to do that.
And then when you look at the work that we all have to do in this space, we all have to do work on ourselves. What are some of the things that you've been doing personally to just better equip yourself to navigate these roads? Obviously, you get it. Just from your own cultural background as well. But we all, regardless of what our backgrounds are, we have to do the work. So what about you when it comes to your own work on this issue?
I mean, I continue to try to be an ally. I mean, all that I can do is to listen, to empathize, to try to make change, to try to impact change where I can. And where I can is, you know, putting forth diverse candidates. You know, when we have a slate of candidates that is, you know, not diverse, it does not go over well with our CEO. It does not go over well with our D&I director. And we go back to the well and we continue to network and call people and reach out to individuals, and we'll uncover new candidates. Now, again, that doesn't mean that these particular candidates are going to be qualified for that particular role, but at least it puts them on our radar. We can help develop, we can help get them exposure to more clients of ours. And for me, it's about continually challenging myself. You know, I'm at a point where I have 3 children who are challenging me. They're socially aware, as I have been from my life, you know, growing up in Yonkers and Mount Vernon, New York, and being exposed to diverse communities, having the opportunity and the luxury, quite frankly, of working for Univision for 7 years, where I was blown away at the way not only my colleagues at Univision, the Hispanic colleagues at Univision, but the community embraced a gringo like myself, you know, who really wanted to help empower this community at the time, 54 million, and build products and services. So all I can do is continue to be an ally and do whatever I can to help further the cause and, you know, make the movement continue. It can't just be a moment. It's got to be the movement. And sometimes I think we've lost a little steam from last summer, and we need to continue to push that forward.
And that's really one of the reasons that we applaud your allyship. Some folks are afraid to have this long form conversation about race and sexism and homophobia and xenophobia and everything else. And the way you just articulated that, it should echo that it's not about lowering the standards for any company. If you bring a lower quality candidate to a company, you guys are going to be out of business very soon. It's about heightening the awareness of having a diverse board, diverse executive suite, a diverse, talent pool. It makes all of us just a little bit better. And so with that, you talked on.
Let me say one other thing, Howard. Diversity comes in different shapes and sizes too. Yeah. I was talking to Cher before we started. For this role at C360, you were a diverse candidate, not because of your race or your height, but you were a diverse candidate because I looked at you and I said, Qualcomm, Intel, this guy's big company guy. I've known him for a long time, big jobs. He's not the right guy for this. Let me call him to network the role. Yeah. And the more that you and I started to talk about it, the more excited I heard you getting about it. And the more I heard you say, the time is right for me. I want to make that next move. I want to do something that I could put my stamp on in a bigger way. And all of a sudden it clicked for me like, this is the guy for this. This is not a networking call anymore. I gotta bring this guy home now. I gotta close this deal. And that was, and it's the same thing I said to Cher earlier was that, when I sent you the resume or profile of James, I don't think the email had left Princeton, New Jersey, and you were already on the phone like, this is our guy. We got to nail this guy down. So it's, sometimes you don't think of diversity as, some big company guy. How's he going to make that transition? That's a big shift.
Yeah.
And you've done that admirably and well.
One thing I wanted to do for our audience and our viewers, again, those who want to be the next Howard or the next James, what advice do you have for them?
Be a self-promoter. And I don't mean it in an arrogant, obnoxious way. I mean, I've worked for a boss, Randy Falco, who used to say it wasn't just enough to create value for a company or for yourself. You have to signal value. You have to show people, whether it's your shareholders, whether it's your customers, you have to show them the value you're creating. It's the same thing with your personal brand. You've got to use the platforms available to you to show what you're doing. Real change, real impact, real success. I'm not talking about just promoting for promoting's sake. I'm talking about how did you move the needle? What did you do to drive a business decision, to drive success, to show EBITDA income, EBITDA growth, to show other metrics that people would value, whether it's marketing, operations, or sales. I think that's one of the most important things is to really leverage that. The second thing is the network. You have to build your network every day, not just, here's my circle. This is good. I'm going to hopefully get a job from that network. No, you've got to be aggressive and reach out. One of the things that I enjoy doing to this day is continuing to mentor and to participate in conversations with young and upcoming talent to try to give them some insight into what I'm seeing in the marketplace, but also to help guide their careers. They need to be aggressive. They need to take charge of it, to your point, Chair, earlier, their own personal brand. They need to build it. They're the CEO of their brand, and they need to make sure that others know what they're capable of. I wish I had LinkedIn,
right.
1982 to 1985 when I was just coming up out of college. It is an amazing resource. You are one email away from the CEO of Apple potentially, or Len Perner, the founder of a major executive search firm. So you've got to leverage that opportunity, and you've got to find ways to leverage your own personal networks, whether it's a college network, whether it's a sports affiliation, whether it's something. Connect with someone personally, and you'll find they will want to connect back with you. The third thing for me is be curious. You need to continually learn. You need to be aware of what's happening in the marketplace, whether it's the industry Howard's in now with the immersive media economy, or whether it's robots, or whether it's cryptocurrency or NFTs. I don't fully understand NFTs. I will be the first one, but I am learning about them.
Right.
And I bought my first NFT yesterday for $25, and it's reselling for $240 today. So I still don't understand how that's all working.
But I like the results.
Man, but there's not many places I can get a 10x return in one day. So there's something there that I need to dig deeper into, understand more, and to figure out how do I then inject myself, or how do I help serve this community? Because what happens is, at least for me, is that a lot of these industries that are exploding now, whether it's gambling or NFTs or cryptocurrency, they're going to eventually need more senior leadership to grow these quickly growing companies. And that's where I think, firms like ours can step in and help them with that growth.
You talked about authentic leadership and authentic leaders between Lev and George and the Bavasi family. You've been blessed to have experienced, been in the room, sat right, at the second chair for some billion-dollar decisions. Are there any stories that are now, all these years later, that you think about the construction of the deal, the style of the executive, how you were empowered to go finalize and put together the initiative? Talk about authentic leadership from some of your authentic leaders.
Listen, I've learned just as much from some of my horrible leaders that I've experienced in my life. There have been several.
Okay.
There have been several, but the thing that I've taken away from all of the great ones has been integrity. Yeah. Being able to go home at night to your family, put your head on the pillow, and know that you did right that day, that you didn't do something that was kind of pitching on the black or, kind of on the edges, that you did it the right way, and that you feel good about it, and you're doing what's in the best interest of the company, and you're doing what's in the best interest of the people who work there, and ultimately for yourself. If those values don't align, and they always have for me, if those values don't align, you're in the wrong role. You're working for the wrong company. Okay. I think what's been fascinating, and I always said this about George Bodenheimer, he was one of the most remarkable leaders I've ever worked for. The man was the same way with the door open as he was with the door shut. There was never hidden agenda. He was always straightforward. He was always direct. He was always honest. It was always appreciated by folks. He was the soul of ESPN. He really was. He set the tone for the company. We were always this, even though we were a multi-billion-dollar organization, we always felt like we were the little engine that could. We always felt like we had somebody right on our heels, and we had to keep pushing. And George set that tone for the company. Right. And I think, those big deals that got done, whether it was programming deals or major decisions or tough decisions to cut staff, it was always done with an empathetic view and an honest view. And at the end of the day, the deal's the deal. Most cases, we would sign deals and put them in the drawer, and then it's about the relationship. It was probably one of the toughest commissioners that we ever experienced when we got the NBA back was your good friend and ESPN, David Stern. There were many times when we were getting the NBA deal back where that deal was on the precipice of falling apart, but Mark Shapiro got it back on track and did a great job in it. And at the end of the day, it's about those relationships, and you can't let the contract, the agreement, dictate the terms of that at the end of the day. That's not the way these long-standing relationships endure.
You remember in Vegas, I don't know what year it is, but I was with Qualcomm. I was, head flunky in charge of absolutely nothing, but Peggy let me run point on the ESPN relationship. And we go into a meeting with Rick and his team. And I think we sit down. We don't go line by line through 35 pages of the contract, but it was pretty detailed, this and for this comma, this semicolon. And at the end of it, Rick signed it and said, okay, now the easy part is done. Now the job is to deliver for ESPN fan and fan base, and to weaponize this new technology that Qualcomm had, which was Brew. It's kind of like the first downloaded app store. Two things I took away from that, working with you in that, Rick, which was your attention to detail on the contract, and then how the contract was important when it was in the file cabinet. When it was put away, then it was time to execute with some ruthlessness in terms of bringing that to market. And I think we did a pretty good job way back then.
We did. Listen, I remember you coming to my office, and I was one of the ones that was pushing early on for ESPN to be in mobile and figure out ways to do that. And, you guys had this new technology and we figured it out pretty quickly. I think it's at CES or whatever. And, you know, again, our relationship doesn't last 25 years if, you know, I'm going to take that agreement and look every time, all right, Qualcomm didn't do this. Let's get lawyers. That doesn't work like that. It works like, Howard, you guys screwed up. Or Rick, you guys aren't giving us the marketing you said you were going to, like, then we figure it out. And that's, you know, that's the way I've guided my career. And I think it's worked out pretty well. And, you know, it's allowed me to have relationships with you and many others over the years, from Jimmy Lynn at AOL, who we were the first sports scoreboard service that we had up on AOL, or, you know, guys that I worked with at Prodigy. You know, I'm going to a Met game.
Oh, that's right.
I'm going to a Met game in a couple of weeks with Harold Topper, who I've known for almost 30 years, who was a Prodigy guy. I mean, those are relationships. And you know, at the end of the day, no one's going to remember our brew deal, Howard. They're going to remember Mutt Jeff, this 5'2" guy standing next to this 6'8" guy, you know, getting the deal done. That's what they're going to remember, that image. So it's always fun when I see Howard and we go to hug each other. And I feel like he's going to pick me up.
So we looked back in the rearview mirror for a little bit for the last 25 plus years. Let's look forward. You know, this SportsTicker and the you know, ones and zeros that are barely moving up and down the network to the point where we are now, moving around 65 megapixels per frame at 60 frames per second in an arena, in a stadium that allows fans, you know, of the sport or of the broadcaster to be their own executive producer, to be their own Jed Drake, to make decisions in their call and see the view that they want to. This combination, we've been talking about this immersive media economy. What happens in the next 3 to 5 years, Mr. Alessandri?
Well, I mean, listen, your crystal ball is as good as mine. I think you're at a really unique and fun intersection. What I do know is gambling is driving it. I see that, and that was what was driving SportsTicker, quite frankly, back in 1982. You know, we were the official sports news service and score reporting service for Las Vegas. We're the only legal place where you could bet on sports. Every sports book had our service because they would not pay off a bet until they got the score from us. So fast forward now 30 plus years, and the ability to bet on every single point in tennis, or shot in golf, or shot in the NBA, you know, that transactional, you know, event by event gambling aspect is going to drive your business significantly, because you are going to be one of the conduits to broadcast that content in real time to consumers, phones, handsets, televisions, wherever they want to see it. So I think gambling is going to drive it. I think content will always win. And that's clear with some of the deals that have been done over the last year in terms of whether it's live sports rights or live data rights. Yeah. When we first did our first, you know, deal with the NBA with Steve Helmuth and Vicky Kaplan at the NBA years and years ago, you know, we didn't know where the money was. We didn't know if our customers would pay to get scores every basket. Not who scored, but just the score, 2-0, 4-2. You know, we didn't know they'd pay incrementally for that. And they did, but it wasn't the numbers we're talking about today. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about the gambling. So as gambling becomes more readily embraced in the US, it's been embraced globally for years. As it becomes more embraced in the US, and it's happening obviously jurisdiction by jurisdiction, state by state, that will drive your business. It will drive data businesses. It will drive live events rights.
Yeah, that's why this space is so very exciting, Rick, which is you need the cloud right there on top of the building. You need this mobile edge computing inside of the building. You need the spectrum, you know, above. You need the fiber below, to basically a very orchestrated collision of ones and zeros around a stadium up to the cloud, and then from that cloud back down. This is fascinating. We're at the very, very, very early stages of this immersive media economy. And I'm really glad that we start we stayed friends all these 25 years.
Rick, with all of your experience, everything that you've done, and that's one of the reasons why Howard has brought you onto the show, because he hand selects each and every one of our guests. And one of his favorite questions, which I'll let him ask, is what I'm looking forward to at this point. And it taps into all of your experience and what you've learned from it. So that icon, we're making you, whether you want to own the icon name or not, we're pulling iconic information and insight from you. So Howard, I'll let you go with your absolute favorite question that you ask every single one of the guests that you choose to be on the show.
Rick, in your professional career, what was your best day and what was your worst day, and why for both? I'm always fascinated to hear backstories on this.
Best and worst day. There have been a lot of great best days, but there was a moment, 2003, I believe it was. It was actually, the date is a blur to me because it was such a great best day that actually the date I forget, because it's the image and the feeling and the 4 hours plus. But my best day work-wise was I had the chance, as part of working for ESPN, to participate in the V Foundation events, a variety of V Foundation events for Jimmy Valvano, and the amazing work that ESPN continues to do to this day for cancer research. And it's just remarkable what the Allegros and Julia Allegro and a bunch of others have done over the years. But we would hold a golf tournament during the ESPYs, every ESPY event. And, I was in a pretty good position working for George, where I got to kind of pick who the celebrity was, who would be in our foursome. And, as a kid who grew up, in Mount Vernon and Yonkers, and watching the New Jersey Nets or the Long Island, the Nets, not the Long Island Nets, not the New Jersey Nets, quite frankly, and the Philadelphia. But Dr. J was it for me. I mean, he was the guy. He was the icon. He was my guy. And he's a great golfer, loves to golf. He's, as you know, Howard. So I got to ride with him and play with him, in an ESPY tournament. And as I'm sitting there, I'm not an ESPN executive anymore. I'm a 12-year-old Yonkers kid, sitting next to Dr. J, like, oh my God, this is insane. Yeah. I mean, I had a smile on my face. I have a picture on my Facebook or somewhere. The smile on my face lasted for like days afterwards. And still to this day, I get excited about it. I still have that picture. And so that was one of my best days. There were a lot of business successes, but that to me, I would never have been able to experience without the professional aspect of my career. The worst day. Listen, my career has had a lot of many more ups than downs, but no doubt about it. Unfortunately, leaving companies, being asked to leave, has been challenging. It hurts your ego. That said, that's not my best, and that's not my worst day by any means. My worst day was working at SportsTicker. I was leading the newsroom operation and the business operation, and I left one night early. And I left the operation in the hands of somebody who I knew was not ready for that role. Mm-hmm. And there were some things that needed to get done, and it didn't get done. And I came back in the next day. I went to my desk, and there was a note from Peter Bavasi, and I still have it in my files, because he would say a couple of things. One is, don't get too famous. He'd say, Ricky, don't get too famous. Like, don't let your head think you're a big shot. Just stay who you are. Remember who you are. And I think that night I thought I got a little too famous. I was like, I'm out of here. I got to do something else. Personally, I'm out of here. Next day I came in and there was a note on my desk. Rick, you left at whatever these things then transpired, because he was still there. He would be first in the morning and last to leave. He goes, these things transpired when you left. And then at the end it was like, Rick, I'm disappointed. Mm-hmm. I know you're better than this. I know, and he left that note, and to this day, it still breaks me up, because it was like disappointing your father. It was like, oh man, I really screwed up. Mm-hmm. That was the worst day of my life. And I saved that note because And you need to remember that. You need to remember that other people are counting on you, that you've set the bar high for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, don't go lower. And that day I went lower, and he reminded me that he didn't yell at me, because he could be a yeller at times. He didn't yell at me. He knew that would get to me, and it did.
That one hurt. Yeah.
And still does. Still gets to me to this day. So
I want to finish on a higher note than that, because that was a punch in the gut. Because
I feel it.
Yeah, my mother told me that she was disappointed in my effort one time, and it just about crushed me. It still crushes me now. Let's go back to Julius Erving. I am living in San Diego. My father played for and was a famous San Diego Charger. So the San Diego Clippers come to town in 1979-80. I get to be a ball boy for the Clippers. I don't know how tall I was, but I had a lot of hair. I tell you that. And that year, so that's Bird and Magic's rookie year. Bill Walton is on the team. I have a autograph book somewhere, Rick, that's worth gazillions. It's somewhere in my mother's living room or in her files. But in February of that year, who comes to town but Julius Erving and the 76ers? And San Diego, it's maybe 55, 54 degrees in February. He walks in the tunnel, down the tunnel.
I can imagine.
There's an aura around him, and everybody's following. He's wearing a mink coat, and it's 55 degrees. Rick, I was like, I'd never seen a mink coat. I don't know why would somebody wear one when it's this nice outside. He comes in at the height of his powers. He hadn't won a championship yet, but everybody knew that he was still the most iconic player that we had seen. This is before Magic and Bird kind of took the league by storm. We go in, we get him a hot dog, and I get an autograph, and I get a pair of shoes. And he says, some kind words to all of us ball boys. And to this day, I see Julius Erving every other year, every couple years, and I try to, reflect on how important those days were for impressionable 11-year-old, 12-year-old kids, and try to say thank you in some meaningful way. We've played golf a handful of times. I don't think this generation understands the altitude, the plateau that Julius Erving was on, because now they have really accessible to anything LeBron might say, because LeBron will tweet it out or text it out. That was, that day I vowed, and when I hit my knees, when I prayed that night, I want to do that one day. I want to play in the NBA one day. I just want to get in the game. I want to make a basket. I want to get a rebound. I want to block a shot. I want to do something like the most iconic person that I had met to date walked in. Now, I should have wished for a 14-year, $4 billion career, but I was neither good enough for that nor deserving of that. But when you talk about Julius Erving, you're talking about my favorite player of all time.
Yeah, there's no question. One final story that you just reminded me when you mentioned Bill. So, I came to know Bill through ESPN, Bill Walton through ESPN as well. And I was running our local basketball league. And I asked if Bill was going to be in town for something. I said, Bill, would you be interested in talking? I can get 300 kids together. I'll send a car for you to come down to Princeton area. He didn't hesitate. Yes, I'll be there. And so I was able to get him down there. We had 300 kids in the audience. Todd Harris, unfortunately, late Todd Harris from the NBA. Todd was a friend of mine. He brought the NBA, the Larry O'Brien Trophy. And Bill sat there, spoke to kids for 2 hours.
Yeah.
He then proceeded to, and he had a game the next day. He should have went back in the car and taken off. He spoke to every kid personally. He signed every single autograph until the arena was empty, until the auditorium was empty. And then he was like, and then it's like 9:30, a quarter. He's like, where can we go eat? I'm like, Billy, don't you have to get back to the city? He goes, no, let's go eat. So then my family and another family, we went out to a local restaurant, and he spent the whole night with us just talking. And I mean, the man was incredible. And when you think of someone like that, and Julius Erving and other folks, I got to go on NBA trips with the commissioner. We went to China, and you're on the Great Wall of China with, Bill Lambier and with Bill Russell and with, Bill Wall. I'm like, oh my God, this is my life. This is incredible. So yeah, I mean, my career has been blessed. I've had a lot of great moments and I've worked with and for a lot of great, terrific people. And, I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity today to recount some of those moments.
And what I love about this show and what we get the opportunity to do is to live through those iconic moments and gain those insights that we can sit there and just by hearing your experience alone and the stories being shared, we can be like, I want to be like that. I want to do that. Or I never thought about that before, getting that perspective. And that's really what this show is about at the end of the day, is learning and growing and taking these insights and becoming our icons in our own right. So definitely, Rick, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm just sharing, the insights around where this industry is going, what people have to do in order to get ready, to be ready, to create those opportunities for themselves, as well as just everything that you've learned along the way. We really appreciate your time, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. So everyone, you've been watching Icons and Insights, and you want to get more of those, so make sure you subscribe. And thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll see you on the next episode.